hello everyone, and welcome to Heaven Official's Blessing. We got some friends, of course. Where's Kitty? There's the one, and there's the other one. They showed up. Say hey, kitties. Gotta show up for the reading and the sitting in the mom's lap. I never like where this camera is. I'm getting a new thing for this stupid camera. Hello, and Calame, Jeff, Daniel, Yana, Gimvizen, Lobsel, Delvin. Hello, folks. Let's see here. Today, we are continuing Heaven Official's Blessing, chapter 37. Last time, I almost said Wei Wuxian. Wrong book. Xie Lian and his buddy, the Windmaster, were in the ghost land, the ghost town, looking for clues as to what had happened to this one heavenly official who sent off a help me kind of thing. He ended up sidetracked in the gambling den because he found Hua Cheng in the gambling den because it's his town, it's his gambling den. And so he is now having a little, I guess, a betting contest, and Hua Cheng's kind of taking the chance to flirt with him. You know how you do. Hey, Anna, Tintins, Robin, thanks everybody for joining us, and we're going to hop right into Chapter 37, Admiring the Flower Through Red Clouds, A Heart Full of Sympathy, 2. The red silk curtains were only opened a small slit, but in his position, Xie Lian was the only one who could make out the person behind the curtains, since he'd blocked everyone else's vision in the hall. Not that they would dare to sneak a peek anyway. That left eye watched Xie Lian, and Xie Lian returned the gaze, subconsciously drawn to it. Hua Cheng's appearance this time around didn't only seem to look a couple years older, but he'd also grown taller. Before, when Xie Lian looked at him, he could still manage to maintain the same level of eye contact, but now he had to strain his neck to look up. After staring at each other for a good while, Hua Cheng finally broke the silence. He said in a deep voice, "Would you like to bet on the highest or the lowest?" It was this deep voice, one that was pleasant to the ear, that pulled Xie Lian back to reality. Whether it was betting on the highest number or the lowest, there was no difference, so he answered right away. "Highest." Hua Cheng replied, "Fine, then I'll go first." Xie Lian's left hand supported the base of the black gambling cup. His right hand covered the circular lid. Hua Cheng stood in front of him with his right hand covering Xie Lian's left. He guided him to shake lightly before lifting the lid. There were 2 dice at the bottom of the cup, a 6 and a 5. From all the way above, Lang Changchu, with his vision like a hawk, saw how easily the high roll took place and his eyes widened. How did that happen? Hua Cheng gently lifted his hand and beckoned Xie Lian to give it another go. "Shake it like this. Now you try it." Xie Lian mirrored. Clearly I need water. Xie Lian mirrored his actions and shook the cup twice, but Hua Cheng said, "Not like that." Even though he was reprimanding Xie Lian, his tone was exceptionally gentle and patient. As he explained, Hua Cheng supported Xie Lian's hand with his own again, but this time his left hand found its way to Xie Lian's right hand, the one that was covering the lid. He instructed softly, "Like this." And just like that, the back of Xie Lian's hands were enveloped within Hua Cheng's palms. When skin touched skin, Hua Cheng's hands felt temperate like jade. The exquisite silver vambraces that Hua Cheng wore were cold as ice. And yet Hua Cheng's movements were careful, and he never allowed them to come into contact with Xie Lian's skin. His hands guided Xie Lian's and shook the black wooden gambling cup in a rhythm that was neither hurried nor slow. Once, twice, thrice. Clack, clack, clack. The sound of the 2 die colliding with each other as they bounced inside the cup was crisp. Even though the shakes were gentle, Xie Lian could feel waves of numbness from the back of his hands, traveling along his arm, spreading to the rest of his body. As he was shaking, Xie Lian lifted his eyes to sneak a peek at the other person, and realized that Hua Cheng wasn't looking at the gambling cup at all. Instead, he was watching him intently, with the corners of his mouth tilted up. Xie Lian couldn't help but return the fond smile, but immediately controlled himself when he remembered the crowd of ghosts that were watching him from above and below. He lowered his head and diligently studied the gesture that Hua Cheng showed him. "Like this?" he asked. Hua Cheng widened his smile. That's right. Just like that." Sorry, I have a grocery delivery coming. I want to make sure he's not missing any of my items. Okay, good. Seeing how Xie Lian shook the cup a few more times, full of hope, he suggested, "Why don't you take a look?" Xie Lian lifted the lid and saw 2 white dice at the base. It was 2 threes. Rolling 2 threes was already considered an impossible feat. It was as if a gentle spring wind had blown past Xie Lian's heart, and he thought, could it be that I've finally learned the trick? However, even though it was shocking, 6 points was still slightly less than 11 points. He cleared his throat and admitted, "I'm sorry, I've lost." But Hua Cheng replied, "Don't worry, this round doesn't count. I'm teaching you right now. Try again." Hearing him say this, even Lang Changchu and Shi Qingxuan were tongue-tied. The crowd of ghosts in the hall stared with their mouths gaping open. Then came the complaints. "What happened to the Lord? I thought he was going to show him who's boss, but he ended up teaching him for real? How can you not count this round? You still call this gambling? If this doesn't count, then when will it count? Looks like the Lord's in a really good mood today." Hua Cheng raised his left brow, and immediately the Kruper standing by his side shushed the crowd. "Everyone, please, quiet down." In the blink of an eye, the hall had quieted down again. Although no one dared to speak, their stares intensified. Hua Cheng chuckled and softly whispered words of encouragement into Xie Lian's ear. "Why don't you try again?" It might be because there were too many ghosts, demons, humans alike packed into this gambling den, that somehow Xie Lian felt his face starting to heat up. "Okay." Rattle, rattle, he shook twice more. This time, when he revealed the cup, it was 2 fours. Hua Cheng mused, "See? Isn't it a little higher this time?" Although he felt something was off, Xie Lian still nodded his head. "Yes, it's a little higher." Hua Cheng encouraged, "You did well. Keep going." With one compliment after another, there were giggles heard in all directions of the hall. Judging by the sound, it seemed as if they all came from female ghosts. Xie Lian couldn't figure it out himself just what posture was the correct one. In the beginning, he paid close attention in studying how Hua Cheng positioned his hands, how he managed the pace, and how he grasped the cup. But now, he was letting Hua Cheng's hand lead him and shook blindly. While shaking, a thought came to him. What if San Lang is just playing around with me? Lang Changchu, who'd been watching from above, probably felt the same and couldn't hold it in anymore. "You! Stop shaking the cup! He's obviously playing you! There's no such thing as a correct posture! He must have cheated!" Hearing that loud, boisterous voice, Shi Qingxuan covered his face in second-hand embarrassment again. Mumbles and muttering grew louder among the crowd, and a rain of dice was thrown at Lang Changchu. "Stupid bastard, shut up! So noisy, we're just getting to the exciting part! Through our Lord's teaching, the cultivator has gotten outcomes higher and higher, one after the other. That's the undeniable truth. That's right. What do you know?" I love that they go from being like, "What is he doing?" to being like, "Don't question him. He's our boss." And talk about third wheeling. I don't think there's ever been an instance of more people third wheeling. Ghosts, demons, humans, hundreds of them, all third wheeling to these two who don't even, like, Xie Lian kind of is embarrassed. Hua Cheng doesn't give a fuck. He does not care. Lang Changchu fumed. "You're practically lying through your teeth." "Ah!" He suddenly stopped in mid-speech and his face turned bright red. It turned out a couple of female ghosts below him had roughly yanked on his dangling waistband and scolded. "If you keep on causing a ruckus and spouting nonsense, JJ will pull off your..." Is it JJ? Gigi? It's the Chinese word for sister. Jiejie. I think it's JJ? It's been a while since I've said that one. JJ will pull off your pants. Good lord. Lang Qiangchu had never been threatened like this before, and his anger made him speechless. You! He could take being beaten by a band of ghosts, but if they were to pull off his pants, then with his martial god status, that would be exceedingly embarrassing. Thus, Lang Qiangchu didn't dare to say more. Xie Lian looked up and saw the other god sending him eye signals. It was funny and pitiful at the same time. Just imagine a guy stuck to the ceiling going... just trying to fidget his eyes like, don't do it! He could only lower his head. He looked at Hua Chang and said in a small voice, San Lang. Hearing his tone of voice, Hua Chang chuckled. Leave him be. Let us continue. Xie Lian gave up and once again held the cup and shook twice. As expected, this time he got 2 5s. Seeing the result, the crowd became even livelier and continued to tease Lang Qiangchu. Do you see that? Higher than the last. But Xie Lian had already realized that Hua Chang was just fooling around with him and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. There's no such thing as correct posture. When it came to him, any posture was wrong. From here on, he might as well give up any hope of changing his luck, but just as he was about to expose himself on the last shake, Hua Chang stopped him. Wait. Xie Lian could feel the hands covering his, pressing down harder, and stopped his movement altogether. What's wrong? With an unreadable expression, Hua Chang asked, This Gaga, you didn't say what would happen if you were to lose. Hearing him call Xie Lian Gaga, Shi Qingxuan and Lang Qiangchu both wore complicated expressions on their faces. The crowd of ghosts also felt massive shivers down their spines, and there were even a few that fainted on the spot. That is a very flirtatious way to refer to another man that you're not related to. It basically means older brother, but using it on... You can use it on friends, you can use it on your date. He is using it in a flirtatious way. It was a little embarrassing to say, but because he was in a hurry before, Xie Lian hadn't thought about what to bet on. He'd thought of also betting 10 years of his life, but a heavenly official's lifespan was quite long, so 10 years wasn't really worth much. Money and treasure? He didn't have any. Spiritual power? He didn't have much of that either. A good amount of time had passed, but Xie Lian still couldn't think of anything to bet on, so he could only turn and ask the owner of the... Gandalf! Second stream in a row, he's going after my dishes and eating the foods! Oh... Let me put this somewhere he can't get it. Look at this criminal! Eating the foods that's not for him! Bad kitty. Where was I? Do you think there's anything on me that's worth betting on? Hua Chang chuckled at his question. Anything's fine. What have you got on you? Xie Lian pondered for a little while and lightly coughed. He might as well be honest about it. I only have a half-eaten bun with me. Hua Chang burst out laughing. Even though he laughed, no one else dared to do the same, even if they wanted to. When he finally settled down, Hua Chang nodded. That's fine. A bun will do. Hearing the agreement, not only were the crowd of ghosts shocked, but the croupers at the gambling table, too. Ever since the opening of the gambling den, there had been innumerous absurd bets made. Organs, life, emotions, spiritual power. But none were a match to the one today. A half-eaten bun. Even Lang Qiangchu couldn't contain his surprise. What's the meaning of this? Are you saying I'm only worth half a bun? The crowd snickered. Someone called out, What's wrong with a bun? You have it easy, so hurry up and shut your mouth. Xie Lian could tell that this defeated voice belonged to Shi Qingxuan, who was hiding among the crowd of ghosts and demons. With a face full of smiles, Hua Chang beamed. Come, it's the last round. Don't be nervous. Xie Lian argued, I'm not nervous. The two maintained the hand-to-hand posture and shook a few times. Even though Xie Lian wasn't really nervous, there was a light sheen of sweat on the hand that was sandwiched between the cup and Hua Chang's hands. Finally, the movement came to a stop. He held his breath for the final reveal. The 2 die were 6s. Xie Lian let out a sigh of relief and looked up at Hua Cheng. Hua Cheng quirked his brows. Oh, I lost. Even though he admitted his loss in a serious manner, he didn't sound the least bit sincere. The crowd below was engulfed in silence. Before, there were still people complaining, if this round doesn't count, when will it count? But now the answer was clear. It counts when Xie Lian wins. This much generosity was almost insane. Even so, no one would dare to comment. The grouper from before raised up the black wooden gambling cup. Congratulations to the young master. You've won this round. Everyone all politely praised him. The Lord showed us a perfect loss. Beautiful. Isn't the winner taught by the Lord? He won because the Lord taught him well. That's right. Learning the correct die rolling posture really broadened my horizons. With such an immense amount of knowledge, even 10 years won't be enough to master it. Hua Cheng was still watching Xie Lian with a grin on his face. Not shifting his gaze, he raised his arm, and with a flick of his hand, Lang Changchu dropped like a rock. Xie Lian winced at the loud crash. Shi Qingxuan couldn't risk exposing himself by rushing forward, so instead Xie Lian went to check on the prince. Are you okay? Lang Changchu got to his feet and dusted himself off. I'm good, thank you. He probably wanted you to go up so he could cheat and make you lose, but thank goodness you won. Xie Lian thought, you're completely mistaken. If he didn't go easy on me, even if the world had turned to ashes, I would not be able to win you back. How is it not obvious from this moment that that man is in love with you, my dude? Oh, I love it. It's so obvious, and oh, it's just so cute. As he was thinking those thoughts, the tinkling of bells was heard, and the sound was followed by gasps of shock that came from all directions. Xie Lian turned around and saw Hua Cheng had finally stepped out from behind the red silk screen curtains. In his previous form, Hua Cheng always sported a slightly crooked ponytail, but now, loose raven locks covered vibrant red clothing, and an aura of demonic energy radiated from the handsome figure. Only the thin braid tied with a red coral bead brought a hint of mischief to the mix. The vambraces were silver, the straps on his boot were silver, the waistband was also silver, even the long, smoothly curved scimitar that hung at his waist was silver. Just like how the blade was slender and long, the person himself was slender and tall. He was leaning against the curtains that had been parted with crossed arms and an unreadable expression. Gege, you've won against me. Xie Lian obviously knew what had taken place and said woefully, Please stop teasing me. Oh, my phone is dinging. Grocery time. Jeff was asking about watching an anime of this too. So on the 31st, the anime premiered, and as of last Thursday, I think there's 4 episodes out. I don't know how many they're going to be doing first season. We may try and watch those tonight, because I haven't watched them yet. Alright, let's see. Hua Cheng raised his brow. I'm not. Why would I? Down below, the crowd of ghosts were bustling with excitement, as wild as the waves rolling in the sea. They whispered among themselves, The Lord changed his skin again today. I'm dying. His new skin is killing me. It's so tender and firm. Dying, you old hag. Aren't you already dead? It seemed that because Hua Cheng never showed his true form in front of anyone and switched appearances fairly frequently, even the band of ghosts in the ghost city didn't know what he looked like, and assumed this must be another of his fake skins. Only Xie Lian knew the one standing in front of him was the real Crimson Rain sought flower of the legends. That's the end of that chapter. So when we first met Sun Long, he was in his human disguise. He looked kind of like he was like 19, he had a braid, he was like about Xie Lian's height. Now we see his real demonically ghostly appearance. He's tall and thin and got awesome armor, and he's got an eye patch and long thick hair, and he's super handsome. The book will not let you forget. So handsome. I really like his demonic appearance. It's a good look. He looks pretty great. And he's usually depicted as being incredibly pale because he's dead. We are on chapter 38. Admiring the flower through red clouds. A heart full of sympathy. Part 3. Xie Lian was still staring at the young man in red. You... He wanted to say something, but under the gaze of numerous pairs of eyes and the unreadable expression on Hua Cheng's face that didn't seem to show signs of recognizing him, Xie Lian debated whether he should act so familiar with him. If it was intentional, then it wasn't his place to say too much either. So he simply said, "Thank you." "Why thank him?" Lang Qiangchu demanded. "This place is owned by him. He probably had malintentions from the beginning." Xie Lian replied under his breath, "Your Highness, let's stop talking and call it a day." Hey Daisy, welcome. I find it so funny that Xie Lian is so uncertain of himself. He called Huacheng San Lang, the name that he was given, and he still thinks, oh, Huacheng must not remember me. He responded to the name he gave me to call him, but he must not remember me. Oh, precious baby. If they were to continue, he really didn't know what would come out of Lang Qiangchu's mouth, especially with the mission at hand. Xie Lian couldn't afford to stay long. He looked at Huacheng a couple more times and pushed Lang Qiangchu toward the exit. I love that. He's pushing him towards the exit, but he just keeps looking back a couple of times, just like, one more look. Just as he did so, Huacheng's voice called from behind him. "Hold it." Xie Lian halted his steps and turned around. The chatter among the crowd started again. "That's right, my lord. We can't let them leave like this. That guy's suspicious. He looks to be quite powerful and is probably hiding something. If you ask me, we should keep him here and interrogate him." "Exactly. Who knows if he's a spy sent from whichever organization to cause trouble in our world?" That last sentence almost stopped his heart. They really did come from the heavens, but the intent wasn't to cause trouble, only quiet probing. Xie Lian wasn't sure if Huacheng had seen the spiritual light Lang Qiangchu had released before, and he wasn't 100% certain Huacheng would let them go if he did. Xie Lian was growing increasingly anxious, but the tone Huacheng spoke in was laid back. "Shouldn't you leave the prize?" Xie Lian was lost. "Prize?" Lang Qiangchu put himself in front of Xie Lian and said cautiously, "Are you going back on your words now?" But Xie Lian thought, if San Lang would never go back on his promises, could he have meant something else? With that, he stepped out from behind Lang Qiangchu and asked, "But didn't I already win the bet?" Huacheng said, "It's true that Gege had won against me now, but don't forget, you lost a round before." Xie Lian was surprised. "But you said not to worry because it didn't count." Even though it took some really thick skin to say something as embarrassing as, "It doesn't count when I lose, and it only counts when I win," Xie Lian still said it. What chapter is this? Welcome, Lisa. We have just started chapter 38. Huacheng replied, "Of course, the ones that were bet against me didn't count. What I'm referring to is the first round you gambled at the long table." It was then that Xie Lian finally remembered. Huacheng was talking about the time he wanted to test out the lowest he could roll, and ended up throwing a double 6 instead. Lang Qiangchu whispered, "I told you he didn't have good intentions and wouldn't let us leave that easily. I won't get sealed this time." Seeing he was readying himself for another fight and was eager to jump at the chance, Xie Lian quickly pulled him back. "Don't worry, we don't need to use our fists." On the other end, Huacheng tilted his head. "How about it? Gege, do you admit your loss?" If one was willing to gamble, one should admit their loss, honestly. There were no other options, so Xie Lian nodded. "I admit." Huacheng extended his left hand with an open palm. "Then give me the prize, like you promised." The prize he'd promised? After some hesitation, Xie Lian reached into his left sleeve with his right hand, felt around, and fished out a half-eaten bun. Unable to look Huacheng in the eye, he toughened his skin and presented it. "You mean this, right?" Truth be told, when he took out the bun, Xie Lian felt the thick skin he'd grown through his 800 years crumble a little, unable to hold up. The ghosts in the hall had been speechless long before, and only watched in silence. Never mind that it was the Lord's first time betting against someone. When the bet came to be a half-eaten bun, they thought it was a joke. But to think in all seriousness, the Lord had actually pursued the person to ask for the bun. Speechless. There was really nothing to say. There were some ghosts who had an even more absurd thought. Either there was some sort of enormous secret hidden within this bun, or this person was actually the Lord's older brother. Yet Hua Cheng grinned as he received the bun, gave it a look, and waved it around in his hand. I've claimed the prize. To see that he actually took it, Xie Lian didn't know what to say. It was only after a good minute he responded. It's cold, and maybe a little hard. Hua Cheng replied, That's okay. I don't mind. Since he answered like this, Xie Lian had nothing more to say to continue the conversation. He already said all he could, so he turned around and headed toward the exit. The nether crowd of the gambler's den all parted for him as he departed. When he first went forward, they parted for him thinking he was a brave warrior. Now they parted for him with fear and suspicion. After walking for a few steps, he could hear the ghost behind him ask, my lord, where are you going now? Hua Cheng lazily replied, I'm feeling good today. I'm heading to the Paradise Manor. Hearing his response, the hall erupted in cheers as if it was New Year's. Xie Lian couldn't help but take another glance back, and saw that Hua Cheng had also turned around. With that half-eaten bun still in his hand, he gave it a light toss and casually took a bite out of it, looking in Xie Lian's direction. Xie Lian paused in his tracks when he saw the scene play out. Suddenly, for some reason, he felt that he shouldn't stay there any longer. He picked up his pace, grabbed Lang Changchu, and ran out. The two left the gambler's den and ran like madmen for a long time, almost knocking over various food stalls along the way. Just when they'd finally arrived at a small, quiet alley, Xi Qingxuan also popped up and reunited with them. Xi Qingxuan fanned himself with such vigor his hair flew wildly in the wind. That was so close, so close! My God, that scared me to the point my face was almost as white as a ghost's! Bye, Delvin. Thanks for joining us. Have a good one. Perhaps it was because they ran too hard that Xie Lian's heart was also beating madly. Lang Changchu spoke up. Yeah, Lord Windmaster, I think your face is still very pale right now. Xi Qingxuan felt his face and smiled. Is that so? This is not because of fright. This is what I'm born with. Changchu, you're also a martial god. How could you be so rash? We're in the middle of the Ghost Realm territory here. If you were to be caught and exposed and news of the undercover heavenly officials in the Ghost City got out, how would we explain this to the Heavenly Emperor? It would destroy peace in the Three Realms. Lang Changchu bowed his head and admitted his mistake. I'm sorry, I rushed in too carelessly. Then he raised his head. But those gamblers were crazy. If that man had flipped open the cup, whether he'd won or lost, the outcome would have been bad. Either his daughter would suffer or he would suffer the consequences. It was in my moment of anger that I crushed the cup. Xi Qingxuan replied, Even so, you shouldn't have jumped in by yourself. Lang Changchu was taken aback. Then, Lord Windmaster, what should I have done? If I didn't go in there, there wouldn't be anyone who would have. His plea was so genuine that Xi Qingxuan didn't know how to respond, and tapped his fan lightly against his temple. Well... Lang Changchu... Oh, I missed a sentence, because my glasses are falling off my face. Xie Lian smiled softly. Let's leave it. Lang Changchu looked at him. Xie Lian continued, I think even if His Highness, Tai Hua, was to get caught and interrogated, he still wouldn't reveal his identity. But to prevent others from picking up any clues from your words, it'd be best for your Highness to stay cautious and avoid capture going forward. Lang Changchu nodded. Okay, I understand. Xi Qingxuan said, All right, let's not talk about this anymore. Oh, right, your Highness. Hearing your Highness, both Xie Lian and Lang Changchu turned around at the same time, and Xi Qingxuan clarified, Oh, I meant the elder. Xie Lian thought woefully, Elder? It's true I'm a little older, but not by that much. Why is it when it comes to me, it always sounds like they're referring to a grandpa? That's because you were born with a grandpa's spirit, Xie Lian, I'm sorry. Xi Qingxuan continued, Your Royal Highnesses, have you two met each other at the Great Martial Hall? If not, let me introduce you. This is the Crown Prince of Yong'an, Lang Changchu, Martial God of the East. This is the Crown Prince of Shanli, Xie Lian, a heavenly official that's highly regarded by the Heavenly Emperor. Even though Xi Qingxuan himself stopped himself and didn't say the words, Xie Lian knew exactly what came after. What else could it be but picks up scraps? Since the words were abruptly swapped in mid-sentence, there was no time to adjust the grammar nor pronunciation. Lang Shangchu looked at Xie Lian and asked in astonishment, "So you're the prince that ascended thrice?" It seemed that Lang Shangchu had really slept through the entire meeting at the Great Martial Hall last time and didn't remember who he was. If he was anyone else and said the same thing to Xie Lian, it would no doubt be sarcastic. But because the question came from Lang Shangchu, Xie Lian wholeheartedly believed this child truly thought ascending thrice was a rare occurrence. His eyes twinkled. "Yes, that would be me." Lang Shangchu responded, "That incident just now, thank you for helping me. Or else." He suddenly remembered something and hurriedly tightened up his waistband, fear still lingering on his expression. He clearly didn't think too much about the past history between the kingdom of Xianli and the kingdom of Yong'an, and turned to Xie Lian. "Your Highness, I thought Crimson Rain Sought Flower knew you. How come he acted as if he didn't back there?" Lang Shangchu finished tying up his waistband. "That was the real Crimson Rain Sought Flower, right? Was that his true form?" Xie Lian didn't even have the time to open his mouth, and Shi Qingxuan already piped up. "How can it be his true form? Hua Cheng has thousands of disguises. Who knows what his true form looks like? Last time when I went to the Banyu Pass, he looked similar to the appearance today, but it's probably a disguise too. It's fake. All fake." Yet Xie Lian clearly recalled Hua Cheng had told him, "The next time we meet, I'll greet you in my true form," that night at Puqi Shrine. He thought to himself, "It's real." But of course he didn't say it out loud. Everyone was so sure that Hua Cheng must be wearing a fake skin, and him being the only one who knew it was Crimson Rain Sought Flower's true form was like learning an extraordinary little secret. He then continued the train of thought. "Seeing San Long's appearance, he really doesn't look that much different from before, only slightly older and taller. That means technically he was in his true form the first time I met him." Strangely, Xie Lian felt a little happy. Shi Qingxuan added from the side, "People say that Hua Cheng is a strange character, and that really seems to be the case. It's obvious he was going easy on you, yet he pretended not to know you. Who knows what he's up to? Could it be he wanted to catch us off guard?" Xie Lian choked. It seemed that anyone could tell Hua Cheng had gone easy on him back at the gambler's den. He went easy on him was what people were saying, but truthfully, Hua Cheng literally let him win one-sidedly. Lang Shangchu was the only one who couldn't tell and frowned. Went easy on him? Why? The other two patted him on the shoulder and decided it was best not to explain. They left Lang Shangchu standing by himself, wondering why Hua Cheng would go easy on Xie Lian and whether or not the two knew each other. Xie Lian and Shi Qingxuan turned and started walking. "It seems we've been exposed. What should we do now?" Xie Lian asked. "Change our disguises and try again? Personally, I don't think that will change anything. With His Highness Tai Hua's fight back there, Ghost City will probably strengthen their security." "Hey, Jessica, welcome." Shi Qingxuan replied, "To be honest, I'd considered the possibility of us getting exposed, but I never thought it would happen this soon." Xie Lian sighed. I know. "What's done is done," Shi Qingxuan said. "Since our covers are blown, you might as well just walk in confidently and do this openly." Xie Lian could vaguely guess what he meant by openly. As expected, Shi Qingxuan explained, "If you want to smooth out the lie, the only way is to have you go find Hua Cheng openly. Tell him you came especially here to see him. He knows you're a heavenly official, right? If so, it's pretty believable to say you brought a couple of little friends from heaven with you." Before Xie Lian could answer, Lang Shangchu, who'd heard the suggestion, immediately cried, "No!" Shi Qingxuan looked at him. "Why not?" Lang Shangchu replied in a serious tone, "Prince Xianli, do you really know Crimson Rain Sought Flower? I heard your conversation earlier. It seems you two are friends." Xie Lian nodded. "Then of course the plan is not feasible," Lang Shangchu said. "Even though a Ghost King is no saint, and the fact he went easy on you must mean he sees you as a friend. If that's so, one must not lie to a friend." I love this little idiot. Shi Qingxuan could feel an oncoming headache. "My God, Shangchu, you dimwit!" Yet Xie Lian laughed and nodded. "What His Highness Tai Hua said is right." Lang Shang-Chu beamed. You agree with me too, right? How is that right? Xing Xuan complained. We are 3 heavenly officials. If we were to report back empty-handed, people would say our success rate is even lower than Ling Wen Palace's, and it would be an utter embarrassment. Xie Lian grinned, and just when he was about to speak, the sound of cries and howls that came from behind them made them turn around. Just outside the alley, a group of demons and ghosts ran past, shouting. Where's the brat with the bandaged face? Where the hell is he? Seeing the other 2 gods' alarm, Xie Lian reassured, Don't worry, they're not after us. Just as the words left his lips, their ears were pierced by a shrill, deafening cry. Yeah, Lang Shang-Chu really is the definition of himbo, isn't he? He does his best. Chapter 39, At the Paradise Manor. Questions of Xian Li. More water. I should check and see if my groceries are coming. Don't want eggs sitting out in the sun. Okay, they're not here. The cry of desperation made Xie Lian's heart drop. Is it really gonna frickin' show up right when I started? Yep, it just... Okay. I will be right back. I'm just gonna go get him off the porch. Alrighty, we are back. Groceries are inside. So this is about demons and gods with gay romance, from what I understand. Yeah, you've got the important gist. There's a lot of really interesting and complicated world building that the story gets into that you should definitely, if you're enjoying the story, go check out the other parts. But that's the basis. It's the same author that did Modao Zushi, The Untamed, which is a show we watched on Discord, and Scumbag's System, which is the other book I'm reading later this week. Whew, those stairs. I had to carry a bookshelf up a staircase because I bought a bookshelf. I created my own problem. Anyway. The cry of desperation made Xie Lian's heart drop. Without a second thought, he ran off in the direction, and there, a bunch of oddly shaped silhouettes gathered in a circle outside the alley, yelling one after another. "He's caught! Beat him again! Fuck, however much this little scumbag stole from me, I'm gonna slice it off him bit by bit." Shi Qingxuan caught up to him. "Your Highness, what's going on?" Water. Xie Lian didn't respond, but walked towards the group step by step. His pace grew in speed, and soon he broke into a run. He forcefully pushed past a couple ghosts on the outside and saw the person who was getting beaten was a ragged boy. He looked about 15 or 16 of age, curled up on the ground, trembling uncontrollably. Even though he tightly clung onto his head, one could see the layers of bandages that were messily wrapped around his head. The bandages were still the same as his hair, stained with dirt. Wasn't this the same bandaged boy that Xie Lian had met at Mount Yujun, and that had gone missing and couldn't be found? No wonder the palace of Lingwen said they couldn't find any traces of him. How could the heavenly palace of Lingwen find him in the mortal realm if the boy had escaped to the ghost territory? In a moment of fury, the couple of ghosts that had gotten pushed aside by Xie Lian pulled him out once more. One ghost yanked on the bandages. "Look at how desperately he wants to keep these on. I bet this little beggar might be even uglier than me." Lang Shangchu was furious and shouted, "What are you doing?" as he threw a few ghosts off to the side. Shi Qingxuan didn't have time to stop him and could only wave around with his fan. "Shangchu, I thought we agreed on not doing things on impulse." This time around, Shangchu had riled up more ghosts. They roared, and "Who do you think you are?" and lunged at him. "I'm sorry, Lord Windmaster," Lang Shangchu called. "This will be the last time." He jumped into the fight, whacking ghosts about. Shi Qingxuan let out an exasperated sigh. "I'm never going out with you again," he said, before also joining the brawl. Because they couldn't expose their spiritual energy, they could only resort to fighting with their fists and feet. The other, smaller group that was beating up the boy was forcibly broken up by Xie Lian. He kneeled down, wanting to help the boy get up. "Are you all right?" Upon hearing that voice, the boy shuddered and took a peek at him from his fetal position. Now that he'd gotten a better look, Xie Lian discovered the bandages that were wrapped around the boy's face were soaked with blood. With patches of black and red, it was a frightening sight, the appearance even scarier than when they'd last parted. The two big eyes that emerged from the gap between the bandages were as clear as day, black iris against the white. Yet those dark eyes that reflected Xie Lian's silhouette were filled with terror and fear. Xie Lian took the boy by the arm. "Come, stand up. It's going to be okay." To his surprise, the boy screamed, pushed Xie Lian away, and bolted. Since this boy had once been infected with the human face disease, he must be connected to the kingdom of Xianli. The moment Xie Lian saw him, he could feel a tug in his heart, and his mind became scattered. Caught off guard by the force of the push, even his straw hat fell off. After the initial shock, he called out, "Wait!" Just when Xie Lian was about to give chase, the few ghosts he'd pulled away earlier grabbed onto him. The boy headed down the street was livelier than ever. At the rate that he was effortlessly weaving through the groups of ghouls and ghosts with his small frame, the boy would disappear soon. It would be difficult for Ruoy to track down a person in this kind of setting. So in that split-second urgency, Xie Lian called out behind him. "My lords, I'll leave this matter with you. Let's separate for now. Go hide and we'll meet here again in 3 days at the latest." Ruoy slid out and sent those ghosts flying in the direction of the other two officials. He bent over slightly, picked up his straw hat, and set off running in the direction of the boy. He squeezed through the crowd with immense difficulty while shouting, "Excuse me! Excuse me!" Because the boy had spent most of his life hiding in the mortal realm, escaping was practically second nature to him. First there was a head, then there was a shadow. After that, there was nothing. He was getting farther and farther away. Xie Lian didn't know if it was his imagination, but he felt the crowds on the street were getting thicker by the minute. With humans and ghosts alike pressed against each other, it really made it difficult for him to pass through. In the midst of all that chaos, Xie Lian's mind was tumultuous. He knocked over a number of stalls and cried, I'm sorry, as he continued to run. Ghosts weren't ones to be crossed easily, however, and they yelled after him, Sorry does shit! Catch him! Xie Lian felt a coldness on his back all of a sudden, as if a hand had grabbed him, and he immediately knocked it back. Who is it? It was hard to tell where the hand came from, but all the ghosts surrounded him, their voices screeching and terrible. Oi, let's teach this little paleface a thing or two. How dare he start shit in our ghost city? A large crowd of monsters and spirits poured out into the street, and seeing he was about to lose the boy in the crowd, Xie Lian did his best to throw off the hand that caught him. Everyone, I'm really sorry. I don't mean any harm. Let me go find someone, and I'll be back to pay you all. The horde of ghosts were relentless, as if... In the midst of all the pushing and pulling, the boy had disappeared completely. Xie Lian slowed to a stop and stood where he was, dazed. Truthfully, he really couldn't be sure what he was feeling. Was it disappointment in not being able to catch the other? Or was it relief that a nightmare had passed? Suddenly, there was a commotion amongst the ghost crowd, and they immediately parted to the sides, forming a path, as if someone of importance was about to arrive. Xie Lian came to and saw the tall form of a black-clad figure walking straight towards him through the path created by the mob. He yelled, Settle down, let him go. The black-clad figure, like most of the ghosts, wore a mask. It was a funny mask with a face, contorted as if smiling woefully. The mob muttered under their breath, It's the Waning Moon officer, and they released their hold on Xie Lian. It seemed this black-clad figure was someone significant in Ghost City. The moment he approached Xie Lian, he bowed. Greetings, cultivator. The Lord wishes to see you. Huh? Me? Xie Lian pointed at himself. The Waning Moon officer replied, That's correct. The Lord has been waiting for you at Paradise Manor. All around them, the mob sucked in their breath. The Lord wants to see him. Did I hear this right? Paradise Manor? That's the Lord's sanctuary. It's never seen guests. Some pointed out, Wait a sec. Wasn't he the one who won against the Lord today at the gambler's den? No, the one the Lord educated? All eyes were now focused on Xie Lian, each pair bigger than the next. Xie Lian couldn't help but raise his straw hat to hide his face. The Waning Moon officer made a gesture. This way, please. Xie Lian nodded and followed behind him. The crowd parted once more, and the ghost officer led Xie Lian through the path. No one dared to follow, and after an instance of time, the two left the bustling street behind, going further and further into the backwoods. During their walk, the two didn't converse. Xie Lian felt that Waning Moon officer walked like he was going to disappear into the shadows, and followed closely. Subconsciously, his eyes swept past the officer's wrist, and noticed that upon it was a black, cursed circle. It was something he was more than familiar with. A cursed shackle. His eyes widened, but he was silent in his shock. Just then, the ghost officer spoke up. We're here. Xie Lian looked up and realized he'd been led to a lake. There were a number of the will-o'-the-wisps floating above the waters, playing around and chasing each other. Next to the lake stood a splendid golden pavilion. Both the heavens and the ghost realm had glamorous architecture. However, the distinguished buildings of the heavens put emphasis on prominence and prestige, whereas the buildings in the ghost city were glamorous in their bewitchment and frivolity. Even the large letters of this pavilion, Paradise Manor, emitted an evil aura. Strange music came from the inside, light and soft, incredibly enchanting, as if there were many women giggling and teasing, playing as they sang and danced languidly. Following the music, Xie Lian entered the pavilion slowly, and after raising a beaded curtain, warm, perfumed air came rushing to his face. Xie Lian moved his head slightly to avoid getting engulfed in the scent. A thick snow-white rug made from the fur of some unknown beast covered the floors of the great hall of Paradise Manor, and surprisingly, it was a full pelt. Many beautiful and captivating women, barefoot and clad in light silk, were dancing and playing, sensual and beguiling. The music he heard came from them. The ladies were spinning seductively like bouquets of roses covered in thorns, blossoming in the midst of night. When they spun to Xie Lian, they playfully teased him with their eyes. If any passerby of the night were to accidentally intrude upon this scene, surely they would be even more frightened or enchanted. However, when Xie Lian was observing the main hall, his eyes went straight through those women. The first thing he saw was Hua Cheng, who was seated in the very back of the main hall. At the end of the hall, there was a large divan made of black jade, expansive in size. Upon it could lounge probably over a dozen people. But there was only one man sitting upon it, and it was Hua Cheng. There were a number of gorgeous ghost women dancing before him, but he didn't spare them any looks, only lazily keeping an eye on what was before him. In front of Hua Cheng was a small golden palace. From afar it looked like a heavenly palace, but on closer inspection the little palace was built from thin sheets of gold foil stacked upon one another. Gold foil palace. Xie Lian had played this game often when he was a child. It was a game that was no different than village kids stacking rocks to build houses. Yet because he disliked separation by nature when he was younger, it didn't matter what it was. As long as the objects were placed together, Xie Lian would refuse to separate them. After making a palace, he'd forbid anyone to touch it, wishing if only he could glue the fragile sheets together so it would never collapse. When he was even younger, if he saw his golden palace fall apart, he'd be depressed to the point of refusing food and sleep, until the king and queen coaxed him from his shell. The golden palace before him now was grand, layered in hundreds of foil sheets, fragile like an egg, as if a gentle breeze could blow it down. Xie Lian prayed mentally, "Don't collapse, don't collapse." After a moment, however, Hua Cheng gazed at his work and flashed a smile. He raised a finger and flicked the top of the golden palace. The foils fluttered and collapsed into a heap. The gold foils were strewn across the ground, the golden palace destroyed. Having knocked it down, Hua Cheng appeared amused by his handiwork, like a child who'd pushed over a tower of building blocks. He mindlessly threw away a gold foil sheet that was still in his hand and jumped off the divan. The dancing women immediately stopped in their steps and backed down to the side, silencing their songs. Stepping on the gold foil sheets, Hua Cheng walked toward the entrance. "Since Gaga is here, why not come in? Don't be a stranger after only parting for so many days." Hearing his words, Xie Lian let down the beaded curtain. "Earlier in the gambler's den, it was San Long who pretended not to recognize me." Hua Cheng approached and stopped at Xie Lian's side. "Lang Chengchu was there, so if I didn't put on an act, I'd be giving Gege trouble." That was some really sloppy act, Xie Lian thought. Hua Cheng probably knew that Shi Qingxuan was mixed in the crowd too, so Xie Lian spoke without hiding anything. "San Long is knowledgeable as always." Hua Cheng laughed. "Of course. So, is Gaga here especially to visit me this time?" "Hey, Pablo." If Xie Lian had been honest with himself, had he known Hua Cheng was here, he would have asked for leave so he could pay a visit. Alas, that wasn't the case. Hua Cheng, however, wasn't waiting for Xie Lian's response and smiled. "Whether you're here to see me or not, I'm happy either way." Xie Lian was startled by those words. He hadn't had a chance to respond before the women standing on the side started giggling. Hua Cheng inclined his head and they all stopped at once, their heads bowed low, and soon filed out of the hall, leaving only the two of them in this expansive chamber. "Come have a seat, Gaga," Hua Cheng said. Xie Lian examined him as he followed, smiling. "So, this is your real appearance." Hua Cheng paused in his step. We're now at chapter 40, but we will call it there because I pushed my voice a little this weekend and I don't want a chance doing any more pushing. And that's a good place to stop. So we will continue next Monday. Thanks for listening. No video game stream today because I have some things I need to do around here, but once I'm done, I'll probably jump in the Discord and stream something, like a movie, show. Maybe we'll watch this anime. Donghua is what it's called when it's Chinese. Join the Discord if you'd like to do that and watch stuff with us. We still need to finish the Untamed and Scumbag system. We haven't finished any of them. We're like 2 episodes away. Tomorrow I will be streaming something later in the evening because I have to run out and do some things. Probably be like 6 or 7, later than normal. And then the rest of the week schedule should be normal. I believe that's it. If you like what I do and you want to support it and get access to even more cool content, please consider becoming a member. You can download these episodes as MP3s if you're a member. You can get free copies of my books. You can get all sorts of extra content. There's a link in the description that describes everything you can get at the various tiers, and there are links to becoming a member through YouTube and Patreon. Thanks so much to the members we have here today: Ankalime, Jeff, Pablo, Daniel, Delvin. All you guys are amazing and awesome, and help the channel keep going. I will hopefully have more stuff soon, more members things. I have a video that should go up tomorrow. Yeah, so that's it for now. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.